Hello, Intergalactic Assembly. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with the best midichlorians. And fucking Star Wars. Don't need an introduction for this whatso-fucking-ever, considering it's one of the biggest damn movie franchises of all time, if not the biggest when you take merchandising into account. It transformed George Lucas from a respectable filmmaker to worldwide legend, and all he had to do was plagiarize a bit of Flash Gordon mixed with Dune. Now, I'm not saying, oh, how dare he be inspired by the works that came before him, as there's whole shit tons of trivia about this movie, some more incriminating than others, but the thing that's most puzzling to me personally is how it's connected to science fiction. Star Wars, or as it was named in an early draft, The Adventures of Starkiller, Episode 1, The Star Wars, had a hell of a time being greenlit for a myriad of reasons. George Lucas's penchant for scripting word salad and insisting casting dwarves for over half the cast of characters didn't help, but strangely a bigger hurdle for studios to overcome was the idea of making a big-budget movie out of a niche genre like science fiction. Science fiction was the realm of B-movies and TV series, not big-budget blockbusters. It's a strange concern to have when, in my opinion, Star Wars isn't really science fiction anyway. And I'm not the only one with that opinion, which is why it's common to hear the series referred to as science fantasy. Though I think that's an inaccurate term as well. It's not the fiction part that's wrong, it's the science. Star Wars doesn't explore scientific concepts or make much of an attempt to explain things scientifically at all. I'd say a better name for this kind of film would be space fantasy. It's a simple adventure with heroes and villains and magical shit, and it all happens to take place in outer space. The basic synopsis is very simple. Evil tyrannical space government seeks total control, so a small band of rebels faces the task of fending them off and restoring freedom to the people. Normally this would be impossible, but hey, the Force works and shit. Sadly, over the years, this simple task has been more and more corrupted by special editions and enhancements and all manners of fuckery, where it's actually kind of impossible to find the original movies as they were originally presented in any quality higher than like VHS or Laserdisc, if you're lucky. But that's where the internet comes in, and the glory of the act of despecialization. When there's a movie this popular and the demand for doing it right is this high, much like a Bethesda game modding community fixing all the bugs, it's amazing how a group of fans is somehow more competent than the companies who actually own the property at just presenting the original movie without all the added bullshit in high definition. And don't worry, the fuckers got my money anyway. So, let's take a look at Star Wars and see what the movie actually looks like when you don't have CGI dewback ass blocking all the shots. The film opens up a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. According to the text scroll, it's a period of civil war and shit. This sounds like a kind of important thing to show the audience, but the point is the rebels somehow won a battle against the Galactic Empire, which just so happened to have the Death Star blueprints that they could steal. Now that they have it, Princess Leia has to deliver them to a secret rebel base. This is made slightly more difficult as the Empire is right on their tail. And the Star Destroyer is too fucking big to even fit in a 10-second clip. Damn. This tiny rebel ship holds not only the princess, but our droid leads, C-3PO, played by Anthony Daniels, and R2-D2, played by Kenny Baker. Also, more importantly, the Imperials knock out their reactor, killing their thrusters, and allowing the Star Destroyer to capture the ship, and the Imperials to board. Oh well, they're just stormtroopers, and we all know how stormtroopers can't hit. Important characters. Generic rebel fodder is fair game for upping the body count, it seems. As such, the droids can walk right through the hallway of laser death without a scratch, escaping the combat, while the princess, Leia, played by Carrie Fisher, somehow gets R2-D2 to the side for some secret business. Which we won't have cleared up for quite a bit, so let's just move on to the big bad Darth Vader, played by David Prowse and voiced by James Earl Jones. He's looking for the Death Star plans which were stolen, which the captain doesn't provide, so Vader crushes his fucking neck.
Commander, tear this ship apart until you found those plans and bring me the passengers. I want them alive.
Oh, the other passengers. That one, not so much. On a totally unrelated note, R2 keeps going on about a secret mission and eventually gets C-3PO to follow them into an escape pod, which is not shot down because there's no life forms detected, and laser ammo is expensive, I guess. Nevertheless, the stormtroopers capture Leia, and Vader interrogates her for the stolen plans. Obviously she denies everything, so he just arrests her for now.
Holding her is dangerous. Word of this gets out, it could generate sympathy for the rebellion in the Senate.
Wow. I'm not so certain this guy realized that his let's call it acting, was going to be in one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Vader points out that she's their best bet to discovering the location of the hidden rebel base, but there's still the problem that they haven't recovered the plans on the ship.
An escape pod was jettisoned during the fighting, but no life forms were aboard.
She must have hidden the plans in the escape pod.
You know, Vader, you got the Force and shit. You really don't need to do this sharp of a leap of logic to move the plot forward. Of course, as we know, the pod contained R2-D2 and C-3PO. Also, as R2 is a droid on a mission, they set off to bring their message to its designated recipient. Meanwhile, C-3PO says fuck it and goes the other way, only to find nothing but big fucking piles of sand. Oh, and a mysterious vehicle on the horizon. But R2 has their own trouble, as when they slip through a rocky valley, they are suddenly besieged by Jawas and shot! Or at the very least, had the stagehand run over and kick the droid over. As it turns out, the Jawas are scavengers, scooping up whatever machines they can find in order to sell them to the locals. Not only did they just so happen to capture C-3PO as well, but the first stop is by a moisture farm where Luke Skywalker, played by Mark Hamill, is in the market for some droids, along with his uncle Owen, played by Phil Brown.
Can you speak Bocce?
Of course I can, sir. It's like a second language to me. I'm a
Yeah, all right, shut up. I'll take this.
Shutting up, sir.
And even taking the Force into account, there are plenty of these moments just set up just so perfect that you gotta look at it and say, wow, I was fucking lucky. Especially considering they don't even bother thinking about buying R2-D2 until the other droid they went for suffers a catastrophic failure, but fortunately 20 seconds is still within Jawa warranty.
Excuse me, sir, but that R2 unit is in prime condition. A real bargain.
Uncle Owen?
Yeah?
What about that one?
What about that blue one? We'll take that one.
Anyone else at all disturbed by the fact that the droids are... I mean, they're clearly intelligent, but for all intents and purposes, they're an artificial slave race. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going to invent a custodial droid, maybe not put the robo-soul in there that makes it so it'll eventually get tired of dealing with all that shit. Well, I guess when your toaster and vacuum cleaner need maintenance, it's nice to be able to keep polite conversation with them. That way, Luke can ask about what looks like combat damage, and find out the droids were previously in the hands of the rebellion. That's not the most interesting part, though.
Got something jammed in here real good. Were you on a Star Cruiser?
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
What's this?
Proof that even when you're trying to desperately send a life-or-death message, that doesn't mean you can't do it in style. The message is incomplete, however, and R2 denies knowing what it even is. However, the droid assures them that they can play back the full message just as soon as Luke removes this pesky restraining bolt.
There you go. Wait a minute, where'd she go? Bring her back. Play back the entire message.
What message? The one you've just been playing.
Well, that's good to know the computers will still be just as reliable in the distant future. Or, a long time ago. The intercepted holographic droid mail will have to wait, though, as it's time for dinner with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, played by Shayla Fraser. This is pretty much to establish, fuck your future, kiddo, your uncle needs you working the farm, leaving Luke's wanderlust unfulfilled.
Luke's just not a farmer, Owen. He has too much of his father in him.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Showing that George Lucas planned these twists all along. As long as you ignore all of the early drafts where Luke was a dwarf, or a guild alien, or a robot, or a woman, and Vader was a very minor character killed off in the first movie with less fanfare than Darth Maul. As long as you ignore all of that, then this is very impressive. So it looks like Luke's life is going nowhere. That is, until he finds out that R2-D2, now free of his restraining bolt, ran the fuck off in the middle of the night. Still not too important, as Luke waits until morning to chase after him, but still early enough that his aunt and uncle don't find out that the R2 unit escaped. Fortunately, waiting this long wasn't a problem at all, as he and C-3PO easily track the droid down, and just in time too, because they detect hostile creatures nearby. But, fuck being safe, Luke wants to go have a look.
They're sand people, all right. I can see one of them now.
That's what you get for spying on the sand people when they're having their private time with the Banthas. It appears Luke's gonna pay for that voyeurism by getting the shit kicked out of him, and the sand people rummaging through his things. Luckily for him, though, another figure swoops in, so dark and powerful, the creatures run for the hills. It turns out to be...
Hello there.
Alec Guinness, playing the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or, well, we're not supposed to know that yet. It's Ben Kenobi. Old Ben Kenobi. It's the best pseudonym he could think of. But hey, he's been hiding here on Tatooine for decades, so it's not like he just spouts off his real name to anyone 5 seconds into conversation.
You know him?
Well, of course I know him. He's me. I haven't gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born.
Oh, wait, actually, slightly after. Not very far, though. Don't worry, no one's gonna hold me to this shit anyway. Catching up on specifics will have to wait because the Sand People will be back soon, and C-3PO is all over the place. So as they don't have much time, they pick up the pieces and head back to Old Ben's hut. Yes, he's Obi-Wan, we know he's Obi-Wan, but everyone just calls him Ben from here on out. As there's a lot of explaining to do, he hops right to it. Turns out Luke's father wasn't a spice freighter, but a Jedi Knight who fought alongside Obi-Wan long before the Empire controlled the galaxy.
Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it.
Something about it smelling like hatred, burnt flesh, and dead children, I don't know. This, of course, would be the old lightsaber, because enemy fire is inaccurate enough on important characters that they can reliably take a knife to a gunfight and win, all thanks to the Force.
It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
And because it's a nondescript, hard-to-define woo that can easily fall under religion, and people generally don't notice in their day-to-day lives, it's very easy for people to just forget about it over the years. I mean, if it was something that was clearly measurable and had scientific backing, then it would just be crazy for people to pretend like it's not real all of a sudden. Never mind all this backstory, though, it's time for the holographic message from Leia. Turns out she placed some mysterious data vital to the Rebellion's victory into R2-D2's memory, and requests that Obi-Wan bring it to Alderaan so her father can recover the data so that they can save the galaxy and shit. Thus he requests Luke come with him to Alderaan, at which point the kid balks, because, you know, hating the Empire and his life is one thing, but you gotta refuse the call for the hero's journey to work. Thus they just start heading back to Luke's home. But on the way there...
Blast points, too accurate for Sand People. Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
I wonder how Obi-Wan would even think that. I mean, he's a major character. He's got first-hand experience of them not being able to hit shit. But the point is, they killed the Jawas who sold the droids to his family, which means they are after R2-D2. Realizing this means they likely trace the sale back to his farm, Luke rushes home. Problem is, when he arrives, the whole thing has been destroyed, and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are out on the porch smoking. Well then, so much for moisture farming, it's time to head to Mos Eisley and get the fuck off this rock.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
I don't know, man. I mean, I've read some emails. Luke and Obi-Wan don't have much trouble slipping by the guards, as the Force means you can just say, nah, it's cool, and the Stormtroopers agree, it's cool. They need a ship, though, if they want to make it to Alderaan, and this leads them to a cantina where they find Han Solo, played by Harrison Ford.
Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's the ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
But parsecs are a measure of distance, not time. Well, you see, the Kessel Run has a lot of black holes in it, so in order to make a shorter distance, you have to actually get your ship closer to the black holes, and therefore it has to be fast enough to be able to escape the black hole's gravity after becoming so close to them. That's a bullshit excuse for sloppy writing, and you know it. After agreeing on an astronomical fee, Obi-Wan and Luke head off to sell the land speeder, while Chewbacca, played by Peter Mayhew, heads back to the ship to get it ready for takeoff. Problem is, Han is held up a bit at gunpoint, by Greedo, played by Paul Blake. Seems Han owes a certain Hutt a substantial sum of money, and as Jabba assumes he won't be getting it at this point, a price is on Solo's head, which the local bounty hunters are more than happy to monologue about, instead of just killing him when they have the chance.
Yes, I bet you have.
And right there is a good enough reason to seek out the Despecialized Edition, if you ask me. With Greedo shooting Never out of the way, everyone gathers at the Millennium Falcon, so Luke can be sorely underwhelmed by it. Not to worry, it's an iconic enough design that in most Star Wars video games it's got the best stats of any ship. Good thing, too, because the Empire is right on their tail, requiring them to take off immediately and flee the Imperials via the handy-dandy jump into hyperspace. Thing is, while all this was going on, Princess Leia has been held prisoner on the Death Star. As she has refused to give the location of the secret rebel base, Grand Moff Tarkin, played by Peter Cushing, figures he can squeeze that out of her by threatening to blow up her home planet of Alderaan.
They're on Dantooine.
There, you see, Lord Vader, she can be reasonable. Continue with the operation. You may fire when ready.
What?
You're far too trusty.
Mr. Tarkin, Wouldn't it be better to leave Alderaan in one piece, for now at least, to be able to threaten her with it later if it turns out she's lying? Or, you know, at the very least, you can't collect taxes from dead people. Or just blast them, I guess. You know, diplomacy and not killing people doesn't have nearly as impressive special effects.
I felt a great disturbance in the Force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
It's just the Chipotle. Okay, back to your training. Luke's working on blocking blasts from a training remote, which he's not particularly good at. Thus, Obi-Wan figures he can't do much worse blind, and indeed, thank you Force, he deftly blocks the strikes. Not that everything's great, as when Han takes a ship out of hyperspace, they can't seem to find Alderaan, and instead have found themselves in a brand spanking new asteroid field.
There's another ship coming in.
Maybe they know what happened.
It's an Imperial fighter.
It followed us!
No, it's a short-range fighter.
Out here because why? What was Tarkin like? Okay, that looked convincing, but you know, you better send someone out there to make sure.
Look at him, he's heading for that small moon.
I think I can get him before he gets there. He's almost in range.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
Ben, how do you know? Is it the Force? Oh, no, Alderaan doesn't have moods. First grade astronomy. Problem is, by the time Han realizes this and tries to back up out of there, the ship is caught in a tractor beam and pulled into the Death Star, where they will surely meet their doom.
There's no one on board, sir. According to the log, the crew abandoned ship right after takeoff. It must be a decoy, sir. Several of the escape pods have been jettisoned.
A decoy from what? Decoys are meant to distract you from something else, so what's the other thing? As it turns out, they didn't just jump out into space to die, but instead hid under the floorboards in a smuggling compartment. This means when the scanning team comes up for a deeper search, they can ambush them and tempt the few standing stormtroopers in for a quick pair of uniforms. Uniforms that came in very handy for deceiving those two. They're not going to be telling anyone that they saw any intruders. As the pressing matter is escaping from the Death Star, they have to figure out how to shut down the tractor beam. Fortunately, R2 loads up the schematics of the ship. Now, this is completely different from the plans he has in his memories that were stolen earlier and totally important to the plot. But the point is, there happens to be a handy on-off switch for the tractor beam. Obi-Wan, having read ahead in the script, knows he must go off alone to take care of this, leaving the rest of the group to hide in a small room. That is until R2 trips over other information that Princess Leia is being held captive on this very ship and is scheduled for execution. Obviously, this ain't Han's problem, but Luke mentions something that might change his mind.
Rich, powerful. Listen, if you were to rescue her, the reward would be...
What?
Well, more wealth than you can imagine.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit.
You'll get it.
Luke, she was using Bank of Alderaan. It's pretty safe to say that her account's not in the best standing right now. But Han doesn't know that, so they come up with a cunning ruse, making like Chewbacca's a prisoner they're transferring to one of the cells near the princess, then just say fuck it and shooting the guards, the walls, and the communications equipment.
Boring conversation anyway.
Luke, we're gonna have company!
More dialogue wheels should have that as an option. We still have enough time for Luke to find Leia, have her insult him, and then start the big rescue.
The who? I'm here to rescue you. I've got your R2 unit. I'm here with Ben Kenobi.
Ben Kenobi? Where is he?
Come on.
Luke, I know you know that Ben is Obi-Wan. How the hell does Leia know that Ben is Obi-Wan? In all those forum posts I saw where people saying, oh, Ben is short for Obi-Wan. No, it isn't, and if it was, then it wouldn't have surprised Luke to find out that Ben was Obi-Wan. The problem with their whole escape plan is, now, well, they don't have one. So Leia says, fuck it, blasts a hole in the wall, and they slip away. Into a garbage disposal, home to a horrifying tentacle monster. Not that that makes much difference, because the thing leaves anyway, once the walls start closing in on them. Don't worry though, their handy-dandy droids can access the computers, stop the masher, and save the day.
Listen to them, they're dying, R2. Curse my metal body, I wasn't fast enough, it's all my fault.
And I can't really fault him for thinking that. It has been 90 minutes after all. But this is a 2-hour movie, so they're fine. However, while Obi-Wan was successful in turning the tractor beam switch to the off position, our heroes aren't out of the jungle yet, facing even more stormtroopers and their terrifying abilities. The Wilhelm Scream. And it's a shame sound doesn't travel in space, because I'm pretty sure a few million of those would have popped out of Alderaan. Nevertheless, the handy-dandy utility belt allows them to heroically swing to safety, while Obi-Wan finds himself alone with Darth Vader, having to heroically swing his lightsaber around while taunting the villain with plot contrivances.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
What have I just imprisoned you then? Oh, I didn't think of that. At this point, their duel distracts the rubbernecking nearby stormtroopers, allowing our heroes a chance to escape. Until Luke notices Obi-Wan fighting Darth Vader, which the old man takes as his cue to just give the fuck up. As far as I'm aware, he's the only one in the entire series who's just poof out of existence like that. Unless it happened sometime in the novels or comics, I guess. So he's dead as shit, but still around enough to tell Luke to do the obvious thing and run, which they do, but are pursued by a small group of TIE fighters. No bother, once Han and Luke take to the guns, they easily take them out. Perhaps a little too easily.
You're sure the homing beacon is secure aboard their ship? I'm taking an awful risk, Vader. This had better work.
I mean, we had him right here with the Death Star plans we've been trying to get from him all movie, but I mean, just letting them go and letting them know how to kill us is probably not going to have any negative repercussions. Even the Princess agrees the Imperials shooting them must have meant that they wanted them to escape, but Han pays it no mind. Thus, they safely make it back to the secret base on Yavin's moon, which must not have been too far because the Death Star is able to follow without much difficulty. That's not a problem, though, because they got those plans. Those really old plans, as we see the design of the Death Star is not quite accurate, but let's hope the shaft of bad architectural decisions is still there.
A precise hit will start a chain reaction which should destroy the station. Only a precise hit will set up a chain reaction.
An exhaust port for the reactors, built miles long in a straight line without anything to block any kind of incoming fire, like an S-curve or just a few bars to catch torpedoes and shit like that. Just straight line, yep. That's the climactic battle plan, though, so everyone suits up and gets ready to take on the Death Star. Except for Han, who just loads up his rewards he got from somewhere, and gets ready to get the fuck out of there.
What good's your reward if you ain't around to use it? Besides, attacking that battle station ain't my idea of courage. It's more like suicide.
Oh, come on, Han, it's not nearly as dangerous as parenting. So they have to attack the Death Star without him. Easy task, considering the station followed them all the way here, and is circling the planet trying to get a clear shot of the moon, where the rebel base is. At this point, the movie is one gigantic orgy of action and special effects. Pretty damn good special effects, I might add, especially considering this movie's from 1977. Nevertheless, the plan is relatively simple. The Death Star is equipped to easily destroy a large-scale attack, but if their small group can slip through the defenses, they can reach the exhaust port and destroy it. I mean, unless another small group comes to fight them off, I guess.
Watch for enemy fighters.
They're coming in. 3 marks at 210.
I'll take them myself. Cover me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the idea that the defenses are too widely spread doesn't take into account that the thing's fucking packed with an armada worth of fighters. As the trench run is a woefully predictable flight path, he has no problem taking out most of the rebel attack forces himself, which eventually means Luke finds himself tasked with doing the impossible, shoving a torpedo right up the Death Star's ass. Thing is, his GPS is acting a little funny.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
Come to think of it, those directions are still more feasible than go down the Golden Gate Bridge for half a mile, then take a right. Trusting the fate of the universe to the voice in his head, Luke turns off his targeting computer. Like it's going to matter anyway, considering Vader's still on his tail.
I have you now. What?
Look out!
Right, so Han shot one of them and the other just ran into Vader. I have a feeling this is the exact outcome we would have had if they had just waited for one of them to sneeze. Point is, Luke can concentrate now, and lands a perfect shot on the Death Star, so it's best to get the fuck away before this happens. I feel a great disturbance in the Force. You know, it's okay. Feels like they were assholes. Therefore, happy ending! Han did come back to save the day, Luke is a hero of the rebellion, the Death Star is no more, and Vader is floating in space somewhere, ready to be used in the sequel. Which a lot of people during production figured that was never going to happen. They thought this movie was going to bomb. And it's really hard to be quite that wrong in life. But, I try. So, that was Star Wars. And, it's not perfect. It's a great movie, of course, and despite my ramblings about what is and is not science fiction, that doesn't change the fact that people love a good fantasy story. The flaws in my eyes are some rough edits and questionable plot points. Now, I'm not saying that when you take the sequels and prequels into account it falls apart. I mean, that's true, but that's no reason to say that this movie has flaws in its own plot. That's a problem with the ones that came after. No, my issue is with the fact that the plans to the Death Star are handled in a very wonky manner. First of all, in this age of high technology, no one was able to just make multiple copies of these plans and transmit them around. Even if we accept that they just can't somehow, having them find the plans on the pre-movie text blurb instead of in the actual movie doesn't make for the greatest screenplay. Yes, a few other points would have to have been modified to have it happen during the main event, but I don't think it would be as jarring. However, that's about the extent of my complaints here. The movie was the start of an insanely huge franchise for good reason. It's an entertaining film to watch with a lot of little details everywhere that not only make the world feel alive, but give moviegoers something to muse over after it's all said and done. Enough is explained to make sense, and enough is left unexplained to give a sense of intrigue. Overall, Star Wars revitalized the science fiction genre, despite merely being a space fantasy movie, because it's a simple enough story to understand in a deep enough setting to get lost in. It's not flawless, but she's got it where it counts, coming in at 4 pissed-off pistol-packing princesses out of 5. So I actually agree with George Lucas that there was room for improvement. Just not that he should have messed with it years later, fixing the parts that weren't broken. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I've been Shado. And remember, may the Force be with you. Is said so often it has lost all meaning outside of I like Star Wars.
He's like a shadow. He's like a shadow. He's like a shadow. The internet personality with the best hair. He's like a shadow. He's like a shadow. He's like a shadow. The internet personality with the best hair.
I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. You watch your language.